Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today's the 5th of November, 2023. Great to have you all here. Hope you're doing well out there and staying warm or cool, depending on where you're at. Thanks for the weather reports and for checking in. It's good to have you here. All right, let's switch over to our agenda and we'll take a look at what we have going today. First up, again, this is a workshop. It's going to be a little bit informal, and that's, I think, what makes these fun for me. I hope it works for you. If you're looking for a very scripted thing, probably this is not the thing. You can come back later, and Emma will have an index so you can jump ahead to the part you're most interested in watching. So with that, today we're going to take a look at the DPA 2017 shotgun microphone. This is a new microphone from DPA, and I think a lot of people have questions about it, especially like where does it fit relative to the 4017, which is a long time favorite of mine and my primary shotgun microphone. So we'll take a look at that, get some samples, and answer some questions around that. We have several questions that were submitted ahead of time, so we'll take a look at those as well. All right, so with that, what I want to do here is I'm going to switch over. Right now I'm using the Earthworks Ethos here, close miking. Let's go ahead and switch over to the 2017. Okay, now I'm on the 2017 from DPA. So we'll start here. Let's go back out to the main camera really quickly. So I've got this boomed just out of the frame right here, and I'm going to see if I can tune the position just a little bit. There's a little bit more toward, it's aimed about right here, and that is the 2017, just for grins, just because I know this is the most exciting part. Here's the 4017. We'll go ahead and switch to this. Okay, and then here is the 4017 up here. Let's see, 4017. That sounds really different to me, doesn't it to you? I'm going to switch out to cables. I think we might have a problem with one of the cables, so give me just a moment here. Switching back to the Earthworks. Okay, it could be. I'm going to swap this right here.
Do you still want to be on the main cam?
Yeah, and Danny asked if I want to be on the main cam, and yes, that's fine. And swap out this cable. I did some testing earlier, recording some samples, and the 2017 did not sound like that. So we may be troubleshooting a cable issue here. Let's switch back to the 2017. Okay, here is the 2017. Positioning is everything. All right, 2017, and then let's switch to the 4017. Little aggro on the faders there. And here's the 4017. Those are a little closer now. So we may have a problem with one of my microphones in the boom pole or in the shock mount. So in any case, there is the 4017. And there is the 2017. So there's our first listen, first samples there for you. And let's dig into... I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on the 2017 for now. Let's go ahead and switch on over to the Mac, and let's take a look at some of the specs here. So big difference, first of all, of course, is that the 2017 is a $995 microphone. The 4017 is over $2,000 or roughly around $2,000 depending on which preamplifier you buy with it. It is different from the standpoint that the 4017 is a modular design, meaning you can swap out different preamplifiers for it. The 2017 is, you get what you get. And actually, as it turns out, that's pretty good. So I'll be doing a full review of this as well on my main channel. That'll probably come out next week. We've had about a week to spend with it so far, and I need just a little more time. We were going to post that today, but it's just not ready. So more to come on that. Let me scroll up here. A couple of things that they kind of cite as strong points. Actually, before we do that, let's pause. Let's take a look at the chat. What are comments in the chat looking like here on those?
This was before you switched the cable.
2017 sounds much more nasal. That was before we switched to cables, okay?
This was also before the switch.
It was roomy for a moment prior to the repositioning. Yeah, definitely. Positioning is everything there, or a lot of things. Looking forward to seeing the DPA 2017. I'm getting a demo from my local DPA dealer in the next couple of weeks. Hope it works out well for you. Hope you enjoy it. 4017 sounds much better. I think once we got the cable swapped out, maybe that changed
That was
some.
before they,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Eric gives a thumbs up for the 4017. And then a thumbs up for both. Once we got the sounding a lot closer now. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Good. All right. So let's go back to the Mac here, and we'll take a look at what we've got. Let's see here. Quality construction, I don't remember what the body is made of. It's heavier than the 4017. So the 4017B, I believe, is 85 grams, and the 2017 is 115-ish grams. So we'll see the exact numbers down below. They're pretty close in weight, but there is an advantage there to the 4017. Obviously, it's a shotgun microphone, super cardioid polar pattern, so it's going to be pretty directional. The thing that DPA does that some others don't do, and let me just pop this cover off. Let's go back to the main camera, Danny. So if you look at the interference tube, let me get the light on it. The interference tube actually has slits all the way around the circumference of the microphone. You don't see that on a lot of, like the classics, for example. If you look at the 46 or 416 from Sennheiser, see if I can get this. You can see there's this kind of solid portion here, and then there are slits, pretty big solid portion here, and then back to slits. Whereas the DPAs, they put slits all the way around the body. Now, I think that's a trade-off. I don't know all that goes into the engineering. I'm not a microphone designer. However, I think there is a trade-off there in terms of possibly RF immunity, maybe, not sure. It probably changes the polar pattern. And I think what DPA is arguing or suggesting is that creating an interference tube that goes all the way around the circumference of the microphone actually makes it a bit more, I think it makes it so that the off-axis sound is not as colored. So we'll do a little bit of experimenting with that to see where we end up. All right. So things they play up, accurate natural sound. I would say I would agree with that. From DPA microphones, from my experience, generally are voiced to sound fairly natural, not super colored. I would say, for example, this sounds less colored than something like a Sennheiser MKH416. But nevertheless, I mean, none of them are bad sounds. Like 416 is not a bad sound. It's just a little bit more colored from my point of view. Good durability. I've never had problems with my 4017. 2017 seems good as well. So here's the polar pattern. Let's go back to the Mac. And here's the polar pattern here. Let's see if we can make that a little bigger so you can see it. What I appreciate about DPA and other companies that kind of operate in this range is that they actually show the reality of a polar pattern, which is that at different frequencies, the shape of the polar pattern differs. So here, for example, at 16 kilohertz, it's very directional. The front lobe is actually quite directional. So if you have that microphone off axis just a little bit, a lot of those high frequencies drop away pretty quickly. Whereas you can see with the lower frequencies down here, the yellow, which is 250 hertz, it's a little bit more it's a little bit more kind of reminiscent of what we typically think of when we think of a supercardioid polar pattern. So you've got the tail on the back, but somewhat directional, but kind of roundish pickup on the front here. Okay, so that's the polar pattern. Here they're talking about, it comes with just a few things. So it comes with this foam windscreen. It comes with this stand clip, and it comes with like a little pleather pouch. So that's a little different than the 4017, which comes with a soft case. In fact, if we let's go back out to the main camera here really quickly. So the 4017 comes in something more like this for a little bit more protection. So that's another place they're probably saving a little bit of money. Low self-noise, they're citing 13 dBA weighted, which is respectable, definitely for a shotgun microphone. I find that to be very useful. Dynamic range of 130 dB. So that's quite a bit of dynamic range, and you can see they kind of lay it out here. They're citing the essentially the max SPL at about 143. So as long as you're not recording jet engines at 1 meter, you're probably going to be okay. Citing the rest of the dynamic range until you get down to the noise floor at 13 dBA weighted. That's actually a useful graph. I wish more manufacturers would do something like this so people understand what we're looking at there. It's a good way to conceptualize it, I think, or to visualize it, I should say. I'm not going to, the 2017, just for full disclosure, is on loan to me from B&H. I did not purchase it with my own money. I bought the 4017B with my money. I bought the MKH416 with my money. The 2017 is on loan from B&H. There are no strings attached, except they asked me to make a video on it and put one of their links in it. But aside from that, they don't tell me what to say or review the video prior to posting or anything like that. DPA has no involvement in this relationship at all. So I can't, because it's on loan, I can't go out in the rainstorm. I can't really afford to buy it right now. So in any case, I can't put it to any sort of acid test, but my experience with the 4017 has been very good. So hopefully that carries through to the 2017. I would think it would. All right, there is also this kind of chart down here. Kind of talks through a couple of the things. Here's one thing that says the housing of the 2017 is thicker than the 4017s, which gives it greater resistance to mechanical impact, but also makes it heavier. If a lightweight shotgun mic is needed, for example, on a boom pole, the 4017 is the right choice. I would say the 2017 is still a good choice too. It is still worlds lighter than, or substantially lighter than the Sennheiser MKH416 or any other more traditional shotgun mic, short shotgun mic as we used to call those. Now I almost feel like they should be called medium shotgun mics because they're actually fairly large relative to this new generation of microphone and substantially heavier. So one thing that's of note here is that the 2017 has a higher sensitivity and generally don't need quite as much gain, interestingly. It's not modular, so as I mentioned before, you cannot switch out the preamplifier on the 2017 like you can on the 4017. I only have the B preamplifier for the 4017, so I've never really taken advantage of that opportunity or that option, but that is there if you need it. So one thought was, hey, is this 2017 just kind of like a cheaper version of the 4017? I think that's becoming clear to you probably by now, but you can see that it absolutely is a new design here. For example, the capsule diameter is different. So on the 4017, we're looking at a 19 millimeter. It's a 17 millimeter capsule on the 2017. Let's see here. Uses less current, substantially less, actually, 1.8 milliamps versus 4.5 milliamps. So I think the internal electronics in the preamplifier are quite a bit different is my expectation. Little bit more dynamic range and a little bit more kind of max SPL. They're listing it actually as 145 as the max SPL here. It can actually go up to 148, but there's a fair amount of distortion at that point, but about 10% is what they cited. But at 145, it's still 1% or less, evidently. So that's good. They're citing the equivalent noise, self-noise, as 13 dBA on both of them, so they're pretty similar there. You also don't have the high-pass filter and the high-frequency boost on the 2017 that you have on the 4017. Really nice feature, especially if you're working in a Zeppelin-type cover outdoors, which oftentimes for a shotgun microphone you are. So it's nice to have that option to kind of bring back some of those frequencies that the wind protection will typically remove for you. So That's a big advantage for the 4017. Now, can you do that in post? Yes. Can you do it on your recorder? Possibly, depending on which recorder you have. So it's not as if you can't solve that problem other ways, but it's nice to have it in the microphone if you can. The diameter of the microphones is exactly the same at 19 millimeters, and the microphone length, the 2017 is actually shorter, 7.2 inches or 184 millimeters versus 212 millimeters or 8.3 inches. So it's about an inch shorter, which is nice. Let's see here. They both say that you should minimum load impedance 2 kiloohms. Here, the output impedance, interestingly, is 60 ohms versus 100 ohms. Again, a nod to the fact that they must be using a different preamplifier, in essence, in addition to a different capsule within the 2017 versus the 4017. They cite relative humidity. This will be important. There's a question later on, up to 90%. So this is the thing with condenser microphones. If they're not RF bias microphones, if they're DC bias microphones, which most condenser microphones are, when you get into super, super humid environments, that's where you have to be careful. When you take your microphone out of an air-conditioned space out into the outdoors, into a rainforest or out on the beach, where it's really, really humid, you'll probably want to keep it contained within an airtight container for the first 20, 30 minutes until it acclimates to the outdoor temperature so that you don't get that humidity condensing on the capsule, which will actually impact the sound. So just something you have to be careful of. I don't know how well this performs here. I'm in Utah. Utah, our relative humidity is 50% right now, which is high for us. So we don't generally run into that problem. But anyway, here's also the sensitivity. So 25 millivolts versus 19. So again, you don't need quite as much gain on the 2017 to get to the equal levels. And as I mentioned before, 115 grams, a little heavier for the 2017, even though it's shorter. It has a thicker body, so it's a little bit more physically robust in terms of, if you're going to drop it or something like that. But this one is going to be lighter. The 4017 will be lighter on your boom pole if you're using it all day. So let's pause there. Let's go back out to the main camera and see what we've got going in the chat. See if anybody has any questions. Downey has a question first.
What's the output balance principle?
Output balance principle. So there are different ways to create a balanced signal. A balanced signal is more immune to potential interference, so electromagnetic or RF. And there are different strategies for doing that. The 2017 uses what they're calling impedance balancing with active drive versus signal balanced. And that you can also see that cited up here in the common mode rejection ratio, greater than 60 dB on the 2017 versus 40 dB on the 4017. If you want to really nerd out and figure out what that means, understand what that means, it has to do here, it has to do with the balancing, the way they're doing the balancing. So they have a new balancing scheme that they're using in the 2017 versus the 4017. I think the 4017 is a much more traditional design for balanced audio. Here they're using a different one where, let me just read this. I'll just read this first paragraph. In electronics, the common mode rejection ratio of a differential amplifier or other device is a metric used to quantify the ability of the device to reject common mode signals. That is, those that appear simultaneously and in phase on both inputs. So with a balanced signal, you're sending two versions of the same audio down an XLR cable. One of them has its phase inverted, and typically. And so what this common mode rejection ratio refers to is how well it is able to manage those situations where both signals take a hit, and some sort of interference hit. And evidently, the 2017 can do a little bit more, can handle a little bit more. That's the general principle. So, okay. With that, let's check in with the chat and head back to our main camera and see what's going on out there. Okay, Matt. I never liked DPA as a live sound guy because I like a mic that I don't have to construct. A friend who worked in films was a huge fan for the same reason. Are you talking about the modular design with the 4017 where you, you have to choose a different preamplifier? Maybe. I keep mine attached all the time if that's what you're referring to, Matt. So it hasn't been a problem for me. But if you're wanting to tune it and change out preamplifiers, very, very fine threads on those. They're nice. I understand. Either way, it's fine. Whatever you prefer. Christopher says, for the full review, please include comparison of RF interference. I find 4017B can sometimes be sensitive to nearby RF sources. We did, yes, on the review, we will cover that, Christopher. What I found was that when I held a wireless transmitter up at, tuned in at 485, I think it was, we put that right up next to the microphone, didn't run into any problems. Same with Wi-Fi on my phone and same with LTE on my phone. Didn't get any sort of interference that we picked up that we could detect on the 2017. So I honestly, I have not had that problem with the 4017B. Granted, I almost always use my boom mic wired. So for those that do have a transmitter right near the 4017B, I know Alan Williams, the boom operator, he's used in fact, the SoundDevices A10 transmitter along with a 4017B mounted right up near the microphone, kind of right in this area right here. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't had any of those problems. So I'd be curious to know under what circumstances other people are experiencing issues with that, but that's been my experience so far. Watson Woo will like that high SPL capability. Yes, so SPL stands, of course, for sound pressure levels. So Watson Woo records firearms, cars.
Not just any car.
Not just any car, primarily performance vehicles. Although he did actually do he has a brand new pack of Toyota Tacoma sounds that he just released. So does a little bit of everything, but yeah, he would appreciate the very high sound pressure levels that this microphone can handle.
Yes, okay.
What is your opinion on the 2017? I have a 416 already. I'm looking to purchase another shotgun mic. I really, really like it. If I were so I have a 416, excuse me. In fact, let's put this up. Let me go ahead and swap out to this just so you can hear what it sounds like relative to it. Making sure that I am muted on this channel. Yes, okay. And there we go. So this is the Sennheiser MKH416. And without getting my cable, oops, it's really muddled up here. Let's go ahead and put this up here. And I'm going to switch to the 416 now. Okay, now we are on the Sennheiser MKH416. Can you hear that? This is the Sennheiser MKH416. I'm booming it right above my head, roughly in the same position that the 2017 was positioned, so that you can hear that. And now we're back on the DPA 2017. So you'll hear I think probably a better sample in the review. Overall, my impression is that the 2017 is a fantastic mic, and probably if I were buying one today, I could only buy one, I would buy the 2017 personally. It's so much lighter. I feel like it's a little bit less colored, and especially what we'll find when you see the review, we went out to an interstate and we tried to capture the sound signature of the off-axis capture of each of those microphones, the 2017 and the 416. The 416 tends to color off-axis sound quite a bit, and the 2017 seems to be a little bit more natural. So what I mean by that in practical terms is that the sound that's off-axis on the 2017 generally just sounds quieter relative to the 416 where it tends to color it a little bit more. It actually changes the character of the sound a little bit, the off-axis sound. So traffic driving by has kind of a much more whooshy sound versus what traffic actually sounds like. So it does change it a little bit. I listened to the 2017 last week into a MixPre 10.2 on Beyerdynamics 770 Pros, and I was happy with the sound, absolutely. I completely agree. That's what I was listening. Well, these are the DT-700 Pro X, but yes, similar headphones. If you're using an older analog wireless, they will mess with the 4017. I know that because I got an emergency call to bring my 416. So I agree with Christopher. Okay, so if you're working with an analog wireless, okay, that could be that would make sense. Thanks for the clarification. Would that high SPL be beneficial when using the much vaunted 32-bit float? Potentially, depending on what you're recording. So a dynamic range is the biggest thing. Dynamic range is the biggest thing, but I mean, if you're recording really quiet sounds, a high SPL in and of itself doesn't necessarily help you. So, but yeah, if you're going to record really quiet things and really loud things in the same take, then yeah, for sure, that high SPL will help. Okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to switch back to the Earthworks. Okay, we're back on the Earthworks Ethos here, and you can hear that difference, I assume. Yep, okay, so we're close miking now too. Very different thing, yeah, very different thing. So what I want to do is I want to get the 2017 down here and show you compared to the 4016, just size and just so you can see that really quickly. So give me just a second here, we will get that disconnected. Out of the shock mount there. Okay, so here is the 2017. I'm going to hold it up so you can see again that interference tube design, which goes the entire circumference. And let's get the 4017 off of its shock mount here so that you can see that. So there they are, right next to each other. Oops, let's hold them the same way. So this is the 2017, this is the 4017. You can barely feel the difference in weight between them. You can absolutely feel the difference in weight between the 416 and either one of these. So that's a big difference there if you're booming out on a end of a boom pole with your arms all day long.
416 is heavier.
416 is substantially heavier, and you will feel that weight. Actually, I can definitely feel the difference between these two now. So in any case, you can see this is the 4017, again, modular design, so you can remove the preamplifier here. And there are much shorter preamplifiers. So this is the one with the high pass filter and the high frequency boost for when you're using it inside of a wind cover. And you can use, there's a shorter one that doesn't have either of those switches, and an even shorter one that's basically like a low profile right angle XLR connector. Similar to, although even shorter than this, but something similar to that. Those are the other choices that you have with the 4017. Okay, so that is the 2017. I'm going to go ahead and rig that back up because some of the questions we have later that were submitted ahead of time rely on comparing the sound of these two. So let me get this back up there. Just putting this in a shock mount. We're using Rycote shock mounts here. So the one that I have, the 2017 rigged in, is the one that comes with the Cyclone. And this one here is the one that comes with the Nano Shield, the Rycote Nano Shield. And then the one I have for the Sennheiser is just kind of it's not a very good one. It's not Rycote's finest piece of gear, but this is one for bigger, heavier shotgun microphones. In fact, what I found on this one is if I put a small microphone in this one, it doesn't isolate the sound very well from mechanical movement because these lyres are pretty heavy-duty lyres, and so they're really looking for a heavier microphone for them to kind of balance out and work nicely in that scenario. Okay, well, let's jump on back over to our questions. We'll come back if you have any questions about the 2017 that we can answer here, but we'll go into our question and answer here. And the first one up is from Dwayne. I would love to hear your thoughts on the SoundDevices firmware updates, especially regarding the updates that require purchase, like the denoiser, and if they are worth it, or if you can achieve the same results with Fairlight or other audio editing programs. Also, I don't really understand the extra channel upgrades they mentioned. How do you get channels 4 and 5 on the MixPre 3.2 with a firmware upgrade, and exactly how would that work? Those are all good questions. So, Dwayne, I really see noise assist is what SoundDevices call. And for those that are not aware, so actually, let's go there. In fact, I'm going to go to sounddevices.com. Let's go to the Mac. And I'm going to come over here to, you go to the store, and I'm going to look at all of the plugins. So for the MixPre 2, they have announced now you can run 2 instances of noise assist. So noise assist is real-time noise reduction. And before, you could only run it on one channel. So for example, if you're recording a mix, you could run it on the left channel or the right channel of your mix, or you could run it on one microphone input channel or line input channel, but you couldn't run it on more than one. Now you can actually run it on more than one. That's one thing. Another thing that they released is this MixPre 3 and MixPre 3.2 plus 2 plugin. And essentially what that does is it removes a limitation that was in place before. So with the MixPre 3, and we can go back to the main camera now, Danny. The MixPre 3 has 3 XLR inputs plus a 3.5 millimeter stereo input. And the thing with the MixPre 3 up until now, or before this plugin was available, and it's still the case if you just buy it, but when you haven't added this plugin, is that you can only record a total of 5 tracks at the same time, 2 of which are a stereo mix, and the other 3 are some combination of those inputs. So it can be 1 XLR input plus the 3.5 millimeter stereo input, or it could be 2 of the XLR inputs plus 1/2 of the 3.5 millimeter input, but you can only record 3 isolated channels at a time. This allows you to record all 3 XLR inputs plus the stereo 3.5 millimeter input all at the same time, plus also the stereo mix. So that's what this plugin does. Okay, so that was one of Dwayne's questions. Also, the second question had to do with a denoiser. That's Noise Assist plugin. Noise Assist is a real-time noise reduction plugin that's, in my experience, quite good at managing steady state sound or continuous sound, like a fan or something like that. Doesn't do quite as well with other like discontinuous or transient type noises, in my experience. But it can be super helpful. If you don't need it in real time, if you can do it in post, then that's fine. I would, if you want to save yourself the money, absolutely, just do it in post, especially if you're using DaVinci Resolve, which is free. Or you have the $300 studio version, which has a really nice artificial intelligence denoiser. So yeah, absolutely. You can do it in post if you have a post workflow. I think the real time is useful if you are actually broadcasting live or you have a very quick turnaround and there's not going to be time to do post-production. That's where Noise Assist can be really, really helpful. Sometimes you can also use it just as kind of a first shot at if you're recording a podcast or if you're recording some sort of video where you want to give the Noise Assist a try so that there's less work in post, you can do it. And then if it doesn't work out, you'll have it on the mix channel and you can throw the mix channel away and just make your own mix in post. So it just gives you a lot of different options. Is it worth it? If you're doing live, I think it can be worth it. If you are going to be doing post-production anyway and you want to save the money, then you can do that as well. So that's my perspective on that. Okay, back to the questions here. Thank you, Dwayne, for that one. Now, Andrew has a few questions here. I know it's really small type. I'll read it for you. Sorry. You had a lot of notes here. I've always struggled to find plug-in power specs on consumer devices, and I've always been under the impression I am underpowering my Sanken COS 11D when I pair it with my Tascam DR10, the original version. Your video has me wondering whether I might notice better sound quality if I paired my lav with my Sennheiser MZA900P XLR adapter and Zoom F3 recorder, particularly in instances where the size of the belt pack isn't an issue. I'm off to look up the specs of the Sennheiser adapter now, but would I be right in assuming that these type of XLR Phantom power adapters generally provide more adequate levels of plug-in power for lavalier mics, or do I need to be careful about overpowering and matching adapters to mics appropriately? Let's pause there. We'll come back to the next question after that. So so a lot of these kind of consumer and prosumer wireless and body pack recorders, it turns out that a lot of them don't provide 3 to 5 volts phantom or plug-in power. Plug-in power. A lot of them actually provide lower voltage bias or plug-in power. I assume for the purposes of power management, I'm guessing. But yeah, a lot of them don't supply enough. And the COS 11D requires a little bit more power than a lot of the kind of very consumer lavalier microphones that come with those devices. So, for example, I reviewed the Hollyland Lark Max a couple weeks ago, and it turns out that the output on that supplies 2.1 volts. Now, your expensive microphone like that, especially a microphone that costs more than the wireless microphone system or the body pack recorder. So yeah, I would, I mean, if it doesn't matter, if you've got a Zoom F3 and you've got that adapter, my guess is that those adapters do supply 3 to 5 volts like they say they will, which is pretty standard for bias power or plug-in power. So my guess again is those consumer devices are really just trying to maintain the best battery performance they possibly can. And so just to kind of, because that's one of the big things for those consumer devices is to be able to say, hey, our transmitter lasts X number of hours. So what they don't want to do probably is have someone plug in their professional grade lavalier microphone that costs more than the wireless microphone system itself and find that the battery burns down a lot faster, or that it even damages the microphone. So I don't know why they don't list that spec, because it's not the kind of thing that most consumers are going to wonder about or ask. So that's if I had to guess, that's why they do that. I had to ask Hollyland to find out what the voltage was that was supplied. There was nothing in their specifications, even on their website or anywhere else. Finally, do you know if the recent generation of 32-bit belt pack recorders are getting better at providing healthy levels of plug-in power compared to, say, the Zoom H1? Or do you know of any prosumer devices in this category that are better in this regard? I believe my recollection is that the Rode Wireless Pro, the newest version from Rode, does supply, if I remember right, it was 4 volts. I don't remember exactly, but I believe it does supply more. A lot of the others, though, especially with the really, really small transmitters, typically will supply less. So it's a trade-off. I mean, if you want a tiny, tiny, tiny transmitter, you can only put a tiny, tiny, tiny battery in it. And if you if you do that, you may not be able to supply as much power for an external device. So it's a trade-off. So yeah, I think, Andrew, if you ever have a question about it for a manufacturer, you should be able to contact their support, and they should be able to tell you. And you can just tell them, hey, I have a third-party lavalier microphone that requires X volts to operate. How much voltage does the DR10 or whatever device you're using supply for its bias or plug-in power? And they should be able to tell that to you. Okay. I do think it's interesting that a lot of people, as a side note, and Andrew, you're not the only one, and I understand it. A lot of people are buying these kind of consumer wireless microphone systems and trying to pair them with very nice lavalier microphones, which is interesting. And I don't think that those manufacturers of the consumer grade devices are really anticipating that. So it's an interesting phenomenon. All right, Thomas has a couple of questions, or 3 questions, about the DPA 2017. What's the build quality like? From first impressions, how would it hold up in humid environments, in snowy conditions? If you've got it outdoors in a Zeppelin type cover or a blimp type cover, I think you're probably going to be fine. You don't think you want to get it too wet as far as snow is concerned. But if it's raining, I think you're going to want to protect it. It is not. It's cited its the spec that it had on its spec sheet was 90% humidity, so you're not going to want to get it wet, in other words. Build quality-wise, it seems very solid, physically solid. So I think it's, for its price, I think it's appropriately constructed. It seems pretty good. Number two, I'm sure you will address this in the test, but would love to know your impressions of the off-axis rejection and pickup pattern of this mic, which I understand has a supercardioid pickup. Yes, and in fact, we can demonstrate that to some extent right now. So let me just pull it down. Let me put it in this this other shock mount. So give me just a second here. Swapping things around here. We get the microphone. I have this shock mount. The nice thing about this is you can loosen it with your fingers and move the lyres back and forth. This is with the Rycote Nano Shield. So I need to, it's a smaller mic, so I have to adjust it a little bit here. And get the microphone up there. This will also, of course, we'll go outside and do a proper example in the review, which we've actually already recorded that part. But just for grins and giggles, let's do this one now. Not grins and giggles, I guess, for answering a question as a demonstration. Okay, here we go. Okay, now we are on the 2017. So I am perfectly on axis right now, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it off to the side. Here is 90 degrees off axis, and then here I am talking into the back of the mic, 180 degrees off axis, coming back towards 90. Here we are at 90 degrees off axis, and then here we are back on axis, 0 degrees. Let me go ahead and mute this. Let's do the same thing here in just a moment with the Sennheiser MKH416. Okay, over to the 416. All right, here we are on the Sennheiser MKH416 on axis at 0 degrees. Now we're going to go ahead and turn it so that it is 90 degrees off axis. I'm talking into the side of the microphone. And now we're going to 180 degrees off axis. This is the back of the microphone, just so you can hear what that sounds like. Coming back to 90 degrees off axis. And I'm probably 35, 40 centimeters from the side of the microphone. And now we are back on axis with the Sennheiser MKH416. So this is interesting here. Listen to this part here as you hear my voice. On axis right here, and then here is off axis right here. So there are a couple things going on there. Number one, you're getting more reflected sound than direct sound, but you're also getting the off axis coloration a little bit. So there's a quick example there with the 416 versus the 2017. Okay, we are now back on the Earthworks microphone here.
Do you also get phasing when you're talking into the back?
Yes.
Because it sounded like there was an echo with, like, you could hear the higher frequency and then you heard a lower frequency.
Wait. Explain that again.
I asked if, I asked if there was phasing when one speaks into the back of the microphone, because it almost sounded like there was an echo. Not really an echo, but there was a separation between the high and low frequency.
Yeah.
It seemed like.
I would... Oh, I've got this cable tangled up here. Sorry about that. Don't know if you were hearing that. Let me switch back to my mic here. There are a few things here. I think that's there's a few things going on. There's probably some constructive and destructive interference, so comb filtering, with the reflected sound coming in to a different part of the micro. So either the interference tube on the sides or into the front directly to the capsule. So there's some comb filtering that happens there. But I think it also has to do with the design where to me, the 2017 sounded quieter when I was talking into the back of it, but it didn't have that strong kind of comb filtering kind of sound to it. So to answer your question, Thomas, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I would probably choose the 2017 over a 416 as an example. I didn't feel like the Sennheiser rejected a lot more either. It wasn't like a lot quieter than the 2017 was. So something else to consider. Okay. There's one other comparison here. If we go back to the question there, he asks, would it cut well with a DPA 6060 lavalier microphone? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't have a 6060 on hand. However, I do have a 4160 on hand, the sadly discontinued microphone, which I used for corporate video because it was the one that you could actually put in a buttonhole along with the button. It would conceal it very nicely without picking up a whole lot of clothing rustle. But let's do that comparison here. So what I'm going to do here is I need to get the lavalier microphone set up here really quickly. So I'm going to power on that transmitter. And we're going to get this microphone. Uh-oh. I lost my sticky. Sticky stuck to another microphone. Now I'm going to have to figure out which side is the front again. Okay, let me switch on over to the 4160. All right, this is the 4160, the DPA 4160. Now, I want to demonstrate something that's really important with lavalier microphones. If I place this over here, do you notice how much the sound changes? If I come under here, if I come up near the throat, if I come down closer to the chest, off to the side, up a little bit. If I talk into it out here or up here, if I were to hide it in my hair up here, you can hear it changes pretty dramatically. So a lot of times people will have it down here or down here. Sometimes they'll have to put it up here where it starts to sound a little more throaty. But that's one thing I want to illustrate first. So with that, let's go ahead and switch over to the 2017 so you can hear how that compares. Okay, now we're on the 2017. This is the DPA 2017. The thing that is interesting is that companies like DPA will make efforts to voice their microphones similarly. And of course, the advantage of that is you can interchange them pretty easily that way, and especially when you're talking about lavalier microphones to boom microphones, whether it be a shotgun or otherwise. So I would say, based on that, it would be a pretty natural cut. However, I think with any lavalier microphone, in post, you're going to have to do some sort of EQ matching. It's not going to be cut and not have to worry about the thing. It's going to be perfectly transparent. That I have generally not found that to be the case with any lavalier microphone, because it just depends on where it's positioned and on the characteristic of the person's voice. So there's so many factors there. But yeah, overall, if the 6060 is anything like the 4160, then I think that would be a fine choice. Just note that you will have to probably do some EQ in post. So Thomas, I think the answer is yes. All right, switching back. Okay, we're back on the Earthworks microphone here. By the way, all of this today is coming through the SoundDevices 888. That's what you're hearing right now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that wireless channel off again, just so we're not burning that down and adding more RF to the room. Okay, next question. That was the previous one. Here we go. Here's the next one. This was mysteriously submitted by someone called This Is For That Thing. Thank you for the question. They said, thank you. I was going to ask you about this, the DPA 2017, as compared to the 416. I don't quite understand the DPA website information about picking up off-axis crowd noise. Isn't that bad to pick up nearby noise? So it's not surgical like the 416? Well, you just saw in the demonstration here a moment ago that I think it's pretty close to as directional as the 416. The difference is that the timbre of the sound that's off axis is not as colored on the 2017 relative to the 416. So that's what they're trying to describe, or I think that's what they're describing on the website when you read that. So yes, it's very directional, just like a 416, but not as, it doesn't color the off axis sound quite as much. So good question. Thanks for sending it in. Rory asks a question. I'm interested in using a MixPre 6.2 to record audio with timecode for iPhone video. As of October 5th, Blackmagic's Blackmagic camera app for iPhone supports Tentacle Sync E. Do you or a viewer know whether one can use DEITY's timecode 1, TC-1, despite the fact the app doesn't expressly support it? My guess is no, Rory. I haven't tested it, so I don't know. I just downloaded the Blackmagic camera app earlier this week, but I have not tried it with timecode. My guess is that there has to be some sort of integration where the camera app has to essentially use either some code or APIs or something from the manufacturer of the timecode, their hardware or their app, probably their app, I should say. So I don't know the answer to that. If anyone else knows in the chat, please let our friend Rory know. But I don't know the answer to that. All right, that is all the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So let's go back to the chat. We have a few minutes here. If you have a question, if you could tag it with @CurtisJuddAudio, we'll go ahead and pull it up. We have ton. Let's go. Here we go. I've got a question. The EW500 rack unit from Sennheiser has 32 compatible channels. Does this mean that 32 microphones can be connected simultaneously per rack unit? Part 2, and is analog still preferable in live sessions over a digital unit? Thanks. Okay, 2 things. Let's go back to the first one. First one, no, that means there are 32 tunable channels. That does not mean you can run 32 microphones at the same time. And the reason I say that is that when you get more than 2 channels of audio, wireless audio, then you have to start worrying about what's called intermodulation, where the fact that there are 2 transmitters working at 2 different frequencies, they create essentially constructive interference, and that essentially takes out some of those channels as available for use. It's a complex topic. It has to do with radio frequency, but if you want to calculate what the intermodulation may be, there is an app called, what is it called here? Freq Finder, Freq Finder. And at least it runs on iOS. I don't know if there's an Android version as well, but that will help you calculate your intermodulation. So when you have one transmitter on this frequency, another one on this frequency, and a third one, you'll start to get these intermodulations where they essentially take out channels that are realistic to use at that point because they're creating some interference there. Okay. And then the second part had to do with, what was the second part again? Is analog still preferable in live sessions over a digital unit? That's a really tough question. The digital systems are starting to get better. If you're going to be doing more than 2 channels and you're going to be working outdoors in particular, or in any place where there's going to be a lot of radio frequency, like a proper performance hall or something like that, I would not go with a 2.4 gigahertz system. They will probably be tough at times to keep them connected. So that's one thing. Those are digital systems. However, digital UHF systems are now starting to come into their own and, in fact, doing really, really well in some cases, depending on the system. Some of the early professional-grade digital systems actually weren't able to transmit quite as far. I think, for example, the Electrosonics first-generation digital systems you lost some range with them. They sounded great, but you lost some range with them. I think their next generation, though, has addressed a lot of that. So it depends on what kind of grade of wireless system you're talking about there. If you've got a good analog system that's been in use for a while, I don't think there's anything wrong with using that. Those are my perspectives there. Oh, hi, Bandrew. As always, thanks so much for your hard work you share with us. You're the best. Thanks, Bandrew. How do I do a heart? There's a heart. Hope you're having a great day. And I can't wait to hear your podcast for this week. All the mics, I just love the BP 4025. Very good. The BP 4025. If you love it, stick with it. It's doing the job.
This is from a while ago.
One of the reasons I got the MixPre 6, so this is referring to the plugin that enables 2 more channels. That's the MixPre 6 has always been able to do that. So it has 4 XLR inputs plus that 3.5 millimeter input, and it could always record all of them. The MixPre 3, for whatever reason, could not record the 3.5 millimeter input. So now it's possible with a plugin that costs $79. Okay, Danny says read this before I read it out loud. I'm going to read for just a second. Okay, so Daniela is asking about how I manage files on the Zoom F6 workflow. Let me write that down as a topic. It's more than we can cover here today, but it is a good topic, so I will write it down as a potential topic for a future session. How to manage files on the Zoom F6 workflow. It's not simple, but I do think that the app is pretty important to be able to do it effectively. Just that's the short version. So thanks for the question. We'll hopefully come back to that soon. I'm new to recording. The BP4025 has 2 cables for stereo recording. I use a Tascam X8. Should I join the 2 input channels into one? Typically, when you do recordings of stereo recordings like that, you typically do link them so that you can control them with a single gain control. So yeah, I generally would. Andrew questioned, the Tentacle Sync Trackee works great with my COS 11D, but not the TL48 or my Countryman Lavs. Okay, good to know. Thanks, Matt, for confirming. I heard DPA demoed the 2017 by using it as a putter, then recording some audio. I missed that demo, but that's pretty funny. Maybe Nathan. I'll have to look that up. The reflected off-axis has that funny Coke bottle sound. I don't know, Eric, if you're referring to the 416 or the 2017, but definitely the 416 definitely does.
Okay, Mark is getting over COVID.
When you say coloration, what are you referring to? Had just enough energy stored to type this, Mark. I hope you feel better soon, first of all. But coloration, so when we talked into the back of the Sennheiser MKH416, I think that's a good example of coloration. So rewind to that part when you're feeling a little better. We'll have it all indexed so it'll be easier to find. But that's an example of coloration. What I mean by that is that the timbre of the sound changes. It doesn't just get quieter, it actually changes, the quality of the sound changes. That's what coloration typically refers to. All right. Coloration means frequencies are captured differently so that you are recording sounds differently and not just quieter. That's a great explanation. I agree. Alonzo, can't wait for the review of the 2017. I know you liked it though. DPA did a great job in my opinion. Also placing this mic at a very competitive price versus the 416 can be a key factor. Absolutely. So it's, yeah. The 416 is such an interesting microphone. It has such a history and a legacy, and it's a fine microphone. But it's funny to me how it's like the SM7B, which is also a good microphone, but it's almost like podcasters feel like they've made it when they've got an SM7B, or and indie filmmakers feel like they make it when they've got the 416. Although technology has moved forward, and I think these new generation shotgun microphones actually sound a little bit better. Is everybody going to notice that? No, this is for the soundies. This is for the really hardcore people. Can you still make good content with a 416? Well, I don't know. Is Star Trek The Next Generation good content? Because as I talked to one of the guys that was a sound, was he a boom operator? No, he was a second unit mixer, and they were using 416s for a lot of. And I realize this is a long time ago, Star Trek Next Generation, but you can still make good content. You can make good sound with it. You just have to be really careful and understand the nuances of your gear. Marco, how can one send a director's feed, boom feed using the routing options without a Comtech device, but instead using something like a Sennheiser G3, G4? We have an entire Sound for Video session on that. If you do a search for Curtis Judd Audio, Sennheiser G4 wireless hop, you should find it. And we talk through that whole thing. Does using another recorder like the Zoom H6 help in any instance? Versus recording audio directly to camera, if that's what you mean, it can. It means you can use microphones that have balanced XLR outputs, which may be better microphones than what you have on your camera. It generally means you can run the microphone farther from the recorder, so you can get it up closer to your talent, which is going to sound worlds better than if you just mount it on your camera. So yeah, I think it can, but in and of itself, it's not as if the preamplifiers on the Zoom H6 are vastly superior, and just hooking any microphone to it and still putting it on the camera is going to sound a lot better than otherwise. But it gives you other options. It gets you in a position where you can put that microphone in the right spot and make better sound. The Huge Tours are using Shure Axient based out of Nashville, so that's a digital system, just for context there. Well, assuming they're using the newest version of Axient, they're all digital systems. The DPA person told me the 2017 is based on I assume you mean the same technology as the new range of mics like the 4055 kick drum, 2011, 2012, and 2015. Very good. That's what it looks like from the specs. So thanks for confirming that. Castillo Sound, I arrived late, but don't know if this question has already been asked. That this capsule is electret. Do you feel that it makes any difference with the previous capsules placed in the old DPAs? Let's wait till you get the samples where I could control things a little bit better for the main review, which will be on my main channel, Curtis Judd. That should probably post next week. You can hear them side by side. I don't know if you're talking about the fact that they're pre-polarized and they, over time they will lose their charge. For performance out of the box, it doesn't make a difference to me. It didn't seem to. But in terms of longevity, it might. I guess that's the short answer. All right. Danny says, time out. Time to go. It's time for us all to get out there and make some great sounds. So hope you all are able to do that this week. Thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great week. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.